Say Shabbat Shalom to the 12 tribes of Yasharal, those who are scattered abroad. Say grace and mercy to all of those who are in the body, part of the body of the Mashiach. Certainly give greetings unto you. Salute all of you that are in the house on today, this beautiful Sabbath day. We certainly say Shabbat Shalom to all. We welcome you to this Sabbath class, Christ Apostolic Church. I'm the teacher on today, Pastor Richard Hazlett, Shepherd Richard Hazlett, Bishop Richard Hazlett, however you want to address. But I certainly welcome you on this day, greet all of you, and salute all of you. Thankful to be a part of this day because I know what the alternative is. So today we're certainly glad that we're still kicking. We're in the land of the living. We are working out prayerfully. We're working out our soul salvation with fear and with trembling, having a fear of the Most High, having a fear of His Word, His Spirit, of His nature, just who He is. Also walking in the light and walking in truth. Wanting to know more about Him, to grow in wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Certainly that is our quest on today, is to know more about Him, to seek Him, to be more like Him, to be in tune with Him. And that's how, when we look at this day, this is the seventh day. It's the Sabbath day. And I know some people say, well, how do you know it's the Sabbath? And don't you follow the lunar Sabbath? And no, we don't follow the lunar Sabbath. We follow the seventh day. And how do you know it's the seventh day? Because those who have given us our calendar and the days of the week, the first day of the week they called Sunday because that was the day that they would worship the sun. And so the first day of the week was the Sunday, the given over to the sun deity. Well, if they never lost that first day, then the day preceding the first day has to be the seventh day. And we're on a 7-day cycle, 7th-day week. That's what week means. It's 7 days. You can't have a week without 7 days. So if the first day is recognized and never lost, then the day prior to the first day is the seventh day. And it aligns us with the Most High. When we recognize His day, it keeps us, it actually shows our faith and our belief that He created the 7 days and He sanctified the seventh day and set it apart from all the other days and gave it to us as a day of rest. This is a day of rest. 6 days we work, seventh day we rest. And that was something that was given unto Israel or Yasharal as a sign upon His people. You will know my people because on the seventh day they're going to rest. They're going to come in from the fields. They're going to come in. They're going to shut their businesses down. They're going to come into their home. They're going to be with their families. They're going to separate this day as a holy day, a sanctified day. They're going to search the scripture. They're going to honor me. They're going to honor me in this day. And those who recognize this day as a day of rest and the seventh day, then they are recognizing our Father up in heaven. Well, I know that many of us say that, the ceremonial days, the feast and all that was done away, was fulfilled in the Mashiach. But when you study the book of Acts and the first church and those who were being born again of water and spirit, which were Israelites initially, and then it spread out to Samaritans and then to Gentiles, the Greeks, Athens. It went into the Rome province. A lot of Romans were converted over. But in order for the Greeks and the Romans to hear the teachings of this book, they had to go into the synagogue on the seventh day, because that's what the church was doing, what we call the church today. In the book of Acts, they were meet in the synagogue on the seventh day, and that's when they heard about the gospel of our Messiah. They heard the gospel of our Mashiach, and it was on the seventh day. And there was no qualms about it. There wasn't a fight. There wasn't conflict. There wasn't a war. There wasn't a lot of slinging, mudslinging and people talking about, you ain't saved, you're going to hell, you're not going to hell. It wasn't none of that. The seventh day set aside as the Sabbath and a day of rest had been practiced for thousands of years, hundreds of, thousands of years prior to the birth of the church. It was just something that was practiced by those who were faithful. Now, those who understand the history of Israel and the history of Yasharal, they know that's one thing that Yasharal had a problem with. They had a problem keeping the seventh day holy. They had a problem separating that day from all the other days. We even see in the Levites in the book of Leviticus. We see it in the book of Leviticus, chapter number 26. And I find that very interesting, because Moses was giving the teachings unto Israel in the wilderness in the book of Levi, in the book of Leviticus. He's giving the teachings unto Israel in the wilderness. And in that teaching, it's worth a study, and it's worth some time to investigate some of the things that Moses said in the 26th chapter of Leviticus, because he talks about what Israel is going to do as if it was past tense. He speaks of the future of Israel, but the way he's speaking unto them, he's speaking unto the people in the wilderness about their future. And when you read it, it almost sounds like the past tense. And that's just how miraculous our, when we look at our Father in heaven and how he has chosen us and this word that he's given unto us. That's the fascinating thing about it, is because this is the book of life, which will speak of things in the future as though they already have passed. That sets our book apart from all other books that are written. There's a lot of books that are written out there, but you're not going to find a book that speaks of future events as in the past. This is something that has already transpired. And I'm talking about your future now. I'm talking about your future as if you've already lived your future. That is remarkable in itself. It's remarkable in itself. It stands alone in itself. And so one thing that our Father in heaven, one thing that he doesn't want us to be, and that is ignorant. He doesn't want us to be ignorant, and we should not be, we should not be afraid of knowledge and being increased in knowledge. Anybody that tries to prevent you from gaining knowledge and wisdom, they have an agenda. There must be an agenda on why you don't want me to walk in light. You know, why is it that as I learn and as I grow, why is it what is it? Is it intimidating to you, or is it an insult to you, or why is the approach to broadening your understanding and broadening your knowledge base, why is the approach to that one that tries to stifle you or to keep you in a box or to keep you under their hand or under their thumb? There has to be an agenda behind it. There has to be. If I'm learning more about this book and it is offensive to some people, why is that? What is the offense of me gaining more knowledge and wisdom? Even when it comes from heaven itself, and I'm learning more through the light that comes from heaven, but why is that offensive to some people? And if you find if it's offensive to you for me to know more and more about this book, why is that? What is your agenda? And a lot of times that's what we misinterpret things. We refuse to look at things in the light that it is. It's one thing to be led. It's one thing to remain in darkness because you have no choice. It's another thing to remain in darkness when the light comes on. So when he turns a light on and then you go over to the switch on the wall and turn it back off, I'm just more comfortable being in the dark. I'm more comfortable being ignorant. It seems like my life was better when I was ignorant. I don't like, some people don't like knowledge. Some people don't like to increase in it. I'm better off not knowing. Does it sound familiar sometimes? Hey, it's better off for me not to know some things than to know and to grow in knowledge and wisdom, because when I do that, all of a sudden, those who I thought was friends, I find out they're not truly friends. Those who I thought was family, I'm finding out, he has a family. I'm mindful of what our Messiah said in the 12th chapter of Matthew, when they told him that, his mother, his brother, his family was standing by. They wanted a word with him, and he says, "Who is my brother and who is my sister? Who is my mother?" And he pointed to the multitude, and he said, "All of those who do the will of my Father in heaven, those that do the will of Ab in heaven, those are the ones that are his brother, his sister, and his mother." So everybody that's claiming to be certain people, certain titles and everything, does not necessarily mean that they are his brother and his sister, because the only ones that are his brother and sister are those that do the will of his Father in heaven. Now, there was time when many of us walked on a certain path. There's a time where many of us walked on a certain path, And that path was very comfortable. And the reason why it was comfortable, because we didn't know of anything else. There was nothing else. I didn't know anything else. So this path that I'm on, I've always been told. Do you know, if you're told something, you know, those mothers who have children, and the mother teach the child or tells a child a certain story, and that child grows up knowing that story, and then that story is reinforced by the educational institution, and that story is reinforced by society, and it's reinforced by ruling governments, and it's just reinforced. They believe that as truth. And if something else is told them that's contrary to that, well, that must not be true, because not only did mom and daddy tell me this, not only did I learn this in the home, I learned it in school, I learned it in society, I learned it from the government, I learned it from the culture, so it must be true. And anything that contradicts that, what do? We throw it out. We throw it out. I can't accept that. I want to go to James chapter 1 and verse 1. Go to James chapter 1, verse 1. And I don't know anybody that would take an offense to this verse when they just read it without listening to it. Because I haven't heard, and I've been around, I got a few years on me, and I've been around for a number of years in the body. I've been involved with, understanding what we call religion. I'm trying to choose my words right, because I don't really want to, we have to be careful of religion, because even our brother James here, and we call him James, but do you know what his real name is? See, we don't want to go into what his real name is, because this is a name that has been given to us. Mama told you that when you was a baby growing up. Daddy told you that. You went to church, they told you. You go to school and they'll tell you. United States government will tell you. Where did the United States government come from? How do they form this? I mean, some people and our children might grow up and think that United States is the oldest country in the world. United States is the only thing that they know. This has to be the biggest, the greatest, the best, because that's all they know, until you start to understand the history of, well, if United States is only 200 years old, what was there before that? And then what was there before 400 years? Where did it come from? When you start to do some investigations and asking questions, and then you start to have doors open up to you, and the doors that I'm talking about that opens up to you, knowledge. The door of knowledge starts to open up. Now, some people get offended. When a door of knowledge is opened up, some people get offended. Some people want to shut that door. No. I know there's 3 doors up there, door 1, door 2, door 3, but the only one you're going to go through is door 3. I ain't going to let you go through door number 2, and you can't have door number 1. You're going through door number 3. Well, why is that? Why am I being restricted? Is there a hidden agenda? And if there is a hidden agenda, who is the one that's hiding it? And why is things being hidden? So when I look at James 1:1, and even though nobody argues that his name is James, until you start to look it up and you realize his name actually is Jacob. His name is actually Jacob. But through many translations, then we pick it up as it used to be James in the 1611 edition from King James, it was James, and then when the hard pronunciation was accepted in the English language, then it became James. Now, for some people, well, it doesn't matter. Why even say anything like that? It really doesn't matter. And then you look at what he says here, and he says James, or Jacob, a servant of Elohim and of the Master, Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. Now, James can say that, and it's cool. But when I start the Sabbath class and I say greeting to the 12 tribes of Yasharal that are scattered abroad, I don't know why he says, who is he? Why does he always talk about, this ain't got nothing to do with the 12 tribes of Yasharal? They'll say that to me and attack me. But when we open up the book and read it, why is there no attack on the writer of the book? Well, we never really, I know he might have spoke to the 12 tribes, but you know what we do after that? Well, let's just try to extrapolate. Let's extrapolate what he's saying and make it applicable to me. And we're conditioned to think like that. That's how we think. We don't like to think that Jacob here, or James, you can call him James, Jacob, James. We don't like to think that James was writing to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. And if someone stands up before the body and starts a message off with, I want to talk to the 12 tribes of Yasharal that are scattered abroad, do you know how many people will shut that speaker off right now? They just shut him off. Well, and we got it easy now because we can turn the channel. I'm done with that. Or turn channel, we can touch the screen. I'm done. He's talking to the 12 tribes of Israel or Yasharal. He's talking to the 12 tribes. I'm done. That has no place today. You'd be surprised how many people say that has no place today in the body. Well, if that is true, then you have to take this book out. Let's just take the book out. When you open up the book and there's 29 books in what we call the New Testament, let's just take one out. And let's just make it 28 books. 28 books, and then 27 in the New Testament. Let's take one out and make it 26. And then let's have, in the Old Testament, we got 39. I'm pretty good with 39, even though there was more than 39 books, but traditionally, how we're traditionally taught, we're taught through the 66. Well, if James is going to speak to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad, why don't you just take that out of your book? Because there's a lot of times where people begin to speak. I want to speak to the 12 tribes of Yasharal that are scattered abroad. See there, I told you, he ain't got no gospel. He ain't got no truth. See there, all he's doing is going after. Well, why don't you say that about James? Just say that about James. Just what do you call that? We call that word I want to use when you black something out. Redact? Is that it? Is that what I'm looking for? Redact? Just redact everything that, starting with James 1 and going through, to the other chapters that he writes, which they really aren't broken down in chapters. He just wrote a letter. But let's just redact everything that James said. Because there are some things that James wrote in here that if you don't know and understand, you have to understand where he came from and who he's talking to, that helps you in your journey, that helps you with that. So there's things that James wrote, even though he was writing to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad, there's things that he wrote that even though you're not one of the 12 tribes, you can still take some of the things that he wrote and use it and make it applicable or help you or expand your knowledge and your understanding of the book. If my mindset is one to where I find it offensive, then I wouldn't even read James. And then what are the things that you would lose from not understanding James or reading James? What are some of the things that would be lost when you look at your repertoire, or when you look at your the knowledge base that you have to where you can understand the writings of those who wrote? And what are some of the gems that we pull out of this book that we would lose if we would just redact it and close it up because he's speaking to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad? And then another thing is, how many people who have written in this book, and I'm talking about from Christ himself, from the Mashiach himself, to all of the other writers that wrote, and when I speak of the Mashiach and all of the other writers who wrote, how many of them referred to Yasharah or Israel being scattered or not being? I mean, how many of them reference, Israel being in other parts of the earth? And then if they do reference, like we have here in James 1:1, if he references Yasharah being scattered to the four corners or scattered abroad, if he references that, then there, who else referenced that? Well, we know the prophets talked about it. Isaiah talked about it. Jeremiah talked about it. Ezekiel talked about it. Hosea talked about it. Zechariah talked about it. Daniel talked about it. So you have all of these prophets that were talking about Israel or Yasharah being scattered. And then we see where our Messiah says in Luke 21:24, our Messiah says there that you're going to go into all the world to the four corners through captivity. And that's where they were going to be. And so there is harmony throughout the scriptures. There's harmony throughout the scriptures. We can find it in the Old. We can find it in Torah. We can find it in the language that's speaking of our Messiah. And we can find it in the disciples and those who carried it into the first century. We can still find that same theme and that same message. But you don't hear about it today. You don't hear about that message. You don't hear about Israel being scattered throughout. You don't hear about that. There's something, yes. Like I said before, when our knowledge base is not being brought